Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Byron York, in his daily memo over at the Washington Examiner, recounts some instant classics. There's absolutely no evidence to indicate that either Biden did anything improper. That was former FBI number 2 man Andy McCabe on CNN September 20th of 2019.
Oh, my gosh.
As the impeachment battle began. There is absolutely no evidence that any of these allegations are true, said CNN correspondent Jessica Dean the next day. We need to state here explicitly there's absolutely no evidence of wrongdoing by either Joe Biden or his son Hunter Biden, said CNN anchor Victor Blackwell, September 2019. The talk went on through September, October, November, beyond. There's absolutely no evidence that either did anything wrong, said Don Lemon, November 6th.
Well, then they were just refusing to look at the information.
Right.
Because it was there.
And it just persisted and persisted and persisted until Hunter Biden disclosed this week that I'm not saying I did anything wrong. In fact, I'll be vindicated. Of course he said that, but acknowledged that there is an FBI investigation into his into the payment of his taxes. And Tom Cotton suggested, well, there's more than just that on Fox yesterday, Senator Tom Cotton.
There's allegations of securities fraud and money laundering related to Hunter Biden's Chinese businesses, a crooked hospital deal with Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, out in western Pennsylvania. These investigations span multiple jurisdictions. And if Joe Biden becomes president, then all of those prosecutors are in line to be fired next month. If there were ever circumstances that created conflict of interest and called for a special counsel, I think those circumstances are present here.
And there's the call for a special counsel, and obviously to happen before there would be a change in administrations. In addition to that, of course, this is not news. We have Senators Grassley and Johnson, their report on Hunter Biden's foreign business dealing. We have so much here, and Jonathan Turley, George Washington University law professor, made the point that we do know that subpoenas were previously issued like a year ago, and that's not just a pro forma exercise that federal authorities do.
Back in October, Senator Ron Wyden and Chuck Schumer were asking the Justice Department not to investigate Hunter Biden. Many of us have been following this story for a very long time. There's been a blackout in the media. They've just refused to really press Joe Biden on it. What we do know is that there is an investigation going forward. That's not that much of a surprise because the laptop was subpoenaed. They don't just do that for recreational purposes. And on the laptop were some really disturbing emails. And as a lawyer, you look at it and there was an informality, a fluidity to these business deals that were being discussed, millions of dollars involving Hunter Biden, his uncle, and references to Joe Biden. There were gifts like a diamond that came from China. All of these things tend to worry you as an attorney because there's so much of this in play, and it's easy to violate laws, including tax laws. The other thing is that when you have a tax investigation, that ultimately looks at all of these transactions, all of this money, and whether you pay taxes on what you received.
Right. As James Freeman of the Wall Street Journal observed, I don't know if Hunter set aside 10% for the big guy, right, but the real issue is whether he set aside 37% for the IRS. The thing, too, here that's frustrating, this investigation apparently started back in 2018, so the media blackout in advance of November 3rd is frustrating, beyond frustrating, really. But also the interminable nature of these investigations, whether it's the Durham investigation or the Hunter Biden investigation, it could have been ostensibly completed well in advance of the 2020 election, where it would have been impossible to ignore if there were, if there was any prosecution, obviously, of Hunter Biden or any other Biden family member. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Bret Baier. Of course, he's the host of Special Report, p.m. Chicago time, weekdays on Fox. #1 best-selling author of 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. Bret, thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
And, well, Bret, first of all, I want to say I'm glad that your son is doing well after his 4th open heart surgery. I saw the picture that you posted on Instagram, and I have to tell you, he's 13. He's going to be taller than you.
He is closing in already. I mean, he's got size 11 and a half shoes. He's 13. He's crazy big. So he's doing great. He's home recovering and out of the hospital, and the doctors and nurses at Children's National are to credit. So we have some more recovering to do, but we'll do it at home, which is a big deal.
Keep a basketball in his hands. Make sure he's
No
working
kidding.
on his dribbling and ball handling skills while he's recuperating. And for those of you who don't remember it, Bret wrote a book about it about,
Right.
half a dozen years ago, Special Heart, right?
That's right. Yeah, that was the first. He's been through 4 of these now, and 10 angioplasties. So that was kind of a book about our journey, and in an effort to help other families that have to go through that. Everybody has something. This is our something.
Well, good stuff. We're glad to hear that he's recuperating, and obviously our entire listening audience will keep your family in our thoughts and prayers. We appreciate that, and appreciate your openness about it, too, to be other regarding in terms of wanting to help other families, which is very nice. On to politics and what Professor Turley had to say, what Tom Cotton wants in terms of a special counsel. Where do you see this Hunter Biden matter going now that there's been an admission that your colleagues in the media can't ignore?
Yeah, there's 2 sides to the story, right? I mean, there's the media side, which is pretty egregious if you look at it just objectively. We often look through the prism of what would this look like if it was someone tied to President Trump, if it was a Trump family member, and what would the media coverage be? And it's pretty easy to get there in your head. So the fact that it's still like a grudgingly coverage of this story is, as you said, frustrating for media watchers. I think the other side of the story is the substance. I think it's interesting that a Hunter Biden statement was put out on a Biden-Harris transition, statement, memo put out to the press. I think that's indicating damage control, before January 20th. And you've got this investigation. You've got the investigation into his brother, James Biden. Investigations can drag on. You're right. But they can also be an albatross for an administration that's trying to get going.
And the report in the Wall Street Journal this week that Attorney General Barr worked to keep Hunter Biden probes from public view during the election, even though he knew about these investigations for months. It seems to me that reporting is some effort to suggest that Barr is some sort of double operative or something like this, when in point of fact, as Turley pointed out, as I mentioned at the outset, I mean, this is not news. There has been reporting on this. It's just news. It's pretending to be news to so many in the D.C. press corps. So Attorney General Barr was probably trying to not make comment on it to keep it from public view for the purposes of maintaining the integrity of the investigation as the nation's chief law enforcement officer. That was my read on it.
Yeah, 100%. It's amazing how the story has turned. Now Barr is the anti-Trump figure who's holding things back, right? Before that, he was the attorney general in the pocket of the president who was doing his bidding at every turn. And so now the narrative has turned. In reality, he is probably just doing what he said he was going to do at the beginning, and that is keep DOJ, FBI out of the election, as opposed to what happened with Jim Comey.
Well, what do you think is going to happen if President-elect Biden takes office? I mean, is this investigation going to disappear?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what the DOJ is going to do. I don't know if a special counsel is the way it's going to go. Clearly, if Republicans control the Senate and they win one of the 2 Georgia runoff seats to do that, I think there'll be hearings that continue. I mean, obviously, you mentioned Senator Johnson, Senator Grassley. There are other possibilities of where that could surface. And, investigations don't just disappear. And if they do, there'll be a lot of questions about how they did.
What about an investigation into this Chinese communist Mata Hari, as she's being termed, that befriended Representative Eric Swalwell, among others, and the calls for Swalwell to step down from the House Intel Committee because of the lack of disclosure, at minimum, back in 2015 as to what was going on?
Well, I think it's going to continue. You heard the House Minority Leader call for that, again, through the prism of what would happen the other way, Imagine Devin Nunes has a relationship with a Russian who is later characterized as a spy, and he puts an intern in his office. Where are we on coverage? So I think Swalwell, you forget that he, was this up-and-coming figure, and he ran for president. I don't know how he thought, knowing what he knew, getting the defensive briefing, that was not going to be an issue should he win the nomination.
Right, and Nancy Pelosi, and Nancy Pelosi's response yesterday was very curious to me, because it's one thing to say, we were briefed at the same time, we were apprised of this, we didn't disclose it publicly because it could have compromised national security. That would require more probing. But it's another thing when somebody does such an obvious, painful segue to a misdirection, when she says, well, the House Republican caucus is suborning somebody who believes in QAnon conspiracy theories. I'm sorry, whether that's true or not, a QAnon Twitter feed, Chinese communists do not pose the same national security threat.
Right. And, in Swalwell's defense or pushback that we really should be looking at the leak from the Trump administration, do we think that President Trump, with all his tweets that come out regularly, that we kind of know his inner thinking all day long, do we think that somehow he's going to keep an investigation of Swalwell and a Chinese spy quiet before an election? I just don't think that's the case. I mean, Axios was working on this story for a year, and kudos to them for getting it across the finish line. But I do think it opens the door to a lot of questions about how much China is doing this and who's involved. And if you listen to the FBI director, they're opening up a counterintelligence case tied to China every 10 hours.
Really? And I love how Swalwell
and
won't come
5,000
forward.
of them.
Yeah. And he won't come forward and say whether or not they had a physical relationship or what the extent of their relationship was. He dances around it.
Yeah, I mean, when the answer is no, they're not going to answer. I think the answer is the answer. Yeah,
exactly.
He is Bret Baier, Fox News anchor, special report, 5 p.m. Chicago time. Weekdays, best-selling author, 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. That's his latest. Bret, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you. And also the other book, Special Hearted Journey of Faith, Hope, Courage, and Love. It is a great gift for Christmas. And Bret Baier joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm Dan Proft.
And I'm Amy Jacobson. And if you're a small business owner or you make the marketing or advertising decisions for a business, then listen up. Once again, our annual Food for the Poor campaign is underway to raise money to feed families in Latin America who are suffering because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our friends at Food for the Poor are working with partners on the ground at feeding centers to provide emergency food relief. And here's how your business can be part of the solution.
Become a Food for the Poor business benefactor. Just make a $2,500 tax-deductible donation to Food for the Poor, and AM 560 will give you 40 60-second commercials to air here on AM 560 The Answer between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday to Friday at no additional cost to you.
To take advantage of this deal, just call Anjanette Natowski, 847-472-8951. Again, that's 847-472-8951, or go to 560theanswer.com/food for the poor. Hey, if you've been dealing with a wet basement